Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are exploring one of the most defining conflicts of the modern era, a war many expected to end quickly, but instead reshaped global power and military thinking. The story of Ukraine's resistance is not just about weapons and battlefields, but about identity, miscalculation, and the limits of raw force in the face of national will. When Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, much of the world assumed Kiev would fall within days. Intelligence, forecasts, media narratives, and even some Ukrainian allies quietly prepared for a rapid collapse. The expectation was simple. Russia had the numbers, the firepower, and decades of military legacy. Ukraine, in comparison, was seen as outmatched and vulnerable. But wars are not decided on paper. They are decided by people, decisions, and momentum. From the first hours of the invasion, the Russian war plan began to show cracks. Instead of a swift decapitation strike, Russian columns stalled, logistics failed, and resistance appeared everywhere. The assumption that Ukraine would not fight hard enough proved catastrophically wrong. Ukraine's refusal to fall started with leadership. President Volodymyr Zelensky's decision to stay in Kiev sent a signal not just to Ukrainians, but to the world. In wars, symbolism matters. A leader who stays becomes a rallying point. A leader who flees creates a vacuum. Russia had planned for the latter and found itself facing the former. At the same time, Ukrainian society mobilized in ways few had anticipated. Civilians volunteered, cities organized defenses, and information flowed rapidly through social media. This was not a silent invasion. Every movement was filmed, shared, and analyzed in real time. Russia lost control of the narrative almost immediately. One of the biggest failures of Russia's war plan was intelligence. Moscow appeared to believe its own propaganda. Ukrainian resistance was underestimated, while internal support for Russia was overestimated. The idea that large portions of Ukraine would welcome Russian troops collapsed within days. Logistics, often invisible to the public, became a decisive weakness. Long convoys ran out of fuel, food, and spare parts. Modern warfare depends on supply chains, and Russia's supply chains were stretched, disorganized, and vulnerable. Ukrainian forces targeted these weaknesses with precision. Another critical miscalculation was strategy. Russia attempted multiple objectives at once. Kiev, Kharkiv, the south, and the east were all targeted simultaneously. Instead of concentrating force, Russia diluted it. Ukraine, defending its homeland, needed only to hold, delay, and disrupt. Ukraine's use of Western supplied weapons also changed the battlefield. Portable anti-tank and anti-air systems gave small units the power to stop large formations. Tanks, once symbols of dominance, became liabilities on narrow roads and urban terrain. Technology leveled the playing field. Morale became a dividing line. Ukrainian soldiers knew what they were fighting for. Russian soldiers often did not. Reports of confusion, low motivation, and poor communication emerged quickly. Wars are not won by equipment alone. They are won by belief. Information warfare played a major role. Ukraine controlled the global conversation. Images of resistance, speeches from Kiev, and clear messaging shaped public opinion. Russia struggled to explain its objectives, even to its own population. In the modern age, perception can influence reality. As weeks turned into months, the war transformed. Russia shifted from rapid invasion to grinding attrition. Cities were shelled, infrastructure targeted, and civilian suffering increased. Yet even under pressure, Ukraine did not break. Each attack hardened resolve rather than weakening it. The failure of Russia's initial plan forced improvisation. Command structures changed, objectives narrowed, and narratives adjusted. But by then, the advantage of surprise was gone. Ukraine had adapted, learned, and strengthened its defenses. International support became another factor Russia had misjudged. Sanctions, military aid, and diplomatic isolation followed. While Ukraine gained resources and legitimacy, Russia faced economic and political consequences that limited its options. The battlefield itself evolved. Drones, satellite intelligence, and real-time coordination gave Ukraine situational awareness that larger armies once monopolized. The war became a case study in how smaller forces can offset numerical disadvantage through innovation. Urban warfare exposed further weaknesses. Cities are complex environments. Defenders know the terrain. Attackers face constant risk. Russia's expectation of quick urban control collapsed in places like Kiev and Kharkiv, where resistance was fierce and organized. Ukraine's adaptability stood in sharp contrast to Russia's rigidity. When tactics failed, Ukraine adjusted. When plans collapsed, new ones emerged. Russia, bound by centralized control, struggled to respond with the same flexibility. The human cost of miscalculation became impossible to ignore. Losses mounted, equipment was destroyed, and morale suffered. Every failed advance reinforced the reality that this war would not be easy, quick, or cheap. Over time, Ukraine shifted from survival to counteroffensive thinking. The goal was no longer just to resist, but to reclaim. This psychological shift mattered. A defender who believes in eventual victory fights differently than one who hopes merely to endure. Russia's war plan failed not because of a single mistake, but because of a series of flawed assumptions. It assumed weakness where there was strength. It assumed fear where there was defiance. It assumed speed where there would be resistance. This war also challenged long-held military doctrines. Large-scale mechanized advances proved vulnerable. Air superiority was contested. Command and control systems were exposed. Militaries around the world took notes. Ukraine's refusal to fall became a symbol beyond its borders. It reshaped alliances, defense budgets, and strategic priorities. Countries reassessed their vulnerabilities and their commitments. The ripple effects spread far beyond Eastern Europe. As the conflict dragged on, the narrative of inevitability vanished. There was no longer talk of quick victory. Instead, there was acknowledgement of stalemate, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Russia's initial confidence gave way to caution. The resilience of Ukrainian society remained central. Power outages, missile strikes, and displacement tested endurance. Yet daily life continued where possible. This persistence undermined the very logic of Russia's pressure tactics. History shows that wars of choice often fail when resistance is underestimated. Ukraine became another example. The will to fight, when combined with preparation and support, can overturn even the most confident plans. The failure of Russia's war plan does not mean the war is over or the danger has passed. It means the original vision collapsed. What followed was something far more complex, costly, and unpredictable. For Ukraine, survival became transformation. Its military modernized rapidly. Its national identity solidified. Its place in global politics changed forever. These outcomes were not part of Russia's calculations. For Russia, the war exposed limitations, not just military, but strategic and political. The gap between ambition and capability became visible to the world. This conflict reminds us that power is not absolute. It is contextual. It depends on leadership, legitimacy, and adaptability. Ukraine had these in abundance when it mattered most. As we reflect on how Ukraine refused to fall, we are reminded that history is shaped by choices. Choices to resist, to lead, and to believe. Russia planned for collapse. Ukraine planned for survival, and survival changed everything. The war continues to evolve, and its final chapter is unwritten. But one truth is already clear. The plan to break Ukraine quickly failed, and in that failure, the world witnessed the enduring power of resistance in the face of overwhelming odds. If this conflict has taught us anything, it is that underestimating a nation's will can be the most dangerous mistake of all. Ukraine's stand rewrote expectations, challenged assumptions, and altered the course of modern warfare in ways that will be studied for generations to come.